Hi, I'm Ken Kalnick, or known as KP Kalnick or Ken Air. The building behind me is the former head office of Saunders Aircraft. Saunders Aircraft relocated from Montreal to Gimli in 1970 when the Air Force Base closed and was in operation in Gimli and had a manufacturing plant here from about 1971 to about 1976 and eventually went out of business. Saunders occupied hangars 4 and 5. They originally started in hangar 1, and the building behind me was the former headquarters building for the base that was located at the entrance, then was moved between hangars 4 and 5. Over the next few months, I'm going to release a series of videos on Saunders Aircraft, the history of Saunders Aircraft, how the company started, the aircraft they were manufacturing, how it was conceived, why the company moved to Gimli, and why it eventually went out of business. Plus, we're going to talk about the airlines that flew the Saunders ST-27, the development and construction of an all-new aircraft called the Saunders ST-28, and I feel this is a part of Manitoba's aviation history, Gimli's aviation history that needs to be told, and I'm excited to share it with you. The videos will probably come out on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. The videos will be up on YouTube for all to see for history. Thank you for watching. Saunders Aircraft Limited, Gimli's other big aviation story. Introduction to the Saunders Aircraft story on video and a possible future book. Big news on September 25th, 1970 was the announcement from the Manitoba government that an aircraft manufacturing firm was relocating from Montreal to Gimli, Manitoba. Big news for Gimli because the sting that the Gimli Air Base was closing was so fresh. Up to 700 air base jobs would be lost when the Air Force left Gimli. Over 50 years have passed since Saunders Aircraft set up shop at the Gimli Airport, and most Manitobans are unaware of Gimli's other big aviation story. Gimli is known as an Icelandic settlement, commercial fishing, a summer vacation destination, and the famous Air Canada Gimli glider. Though the Gimli glider event happened just a few years after Saunders Aircraft disappeared from Gimli, the Gimli glider is the big aviation story in Gimli. The Gimli glider event occurred on July 23, 1983, 8 years after Saunders Aircraft closed up in Gimli. The Gimli glider event lasted just under an hour, from the time the Air Canada Boeing 767 jetliner runs out of fuel over Red Lake, Ontario, and the jet engines quit running. Only 30 minutes had elapsed. However, the successful life and death outcome of the Air Canada Gimli glider event brought instant fame to Gimli. The Saunders Aircraft story in Gimli is much longer than the Gimli glider. Saunders Aircraft Vice President Reg Kersey and Production Manager Stan Zib flew from Montreal to Gimli in October 1970 and checked out where Saunders Aircraft new home would be. Saunders Aircraft in Gimli officially ended in January 1979, and those 8 years Saunders Aircraft was in the news and hundreds of lives were affected. As the Saunders Aircraft operations wound down, the news coverage of Saunders Aircraft was very negative, and thus the closing of the Saunders Aircraft manufacturing plant left no everlasting aviation fame for Gimli. Was either Saunders Aircraft or the Gimli glider successes or failures? You decide. My introduction to the Saunders story came in 2004 when I participated in a radio-controlled model airplane event called Gimli Model Fest. During Gimli Model Fest, we as aviation enthusiasts would check out the Gimli airport and see what aircraft were parked at the airport. Parked on a concrete apron was a modern-looking but weathered airplane. The tires were flat, the engines and propellers were missing. The weeds growing around the aircraft were tall. We could see that this aircraft had not flown in years. We were told that this airplane was a Saunders ST-28. Airplanes are expensive and not are usually abandoned. We wondered, what's the story with this Saunders ST-28?
We got some answers on the ST-28 by meeting Wilf Ansel at Gimli Model Fest. Wilf told us about his time working at Saunders Aircraft. His Saunders stories would always end with, "Saunders was the best job I ever had." In 2012, Wilf Ansel decided to build a 1/5 scale model of the ST-28. It would have an 8-foot wingspan. The ST-28 model would be flown at the 2013 Gimli Model Fest. I volunteered to help Wilf with his ST-28 model research and sketch up some model construction drawings using my CAD drawing skills. As I dove into the ST-28 research and worked on the ST-28 model plans, I soon realized that Saunders Aircraft was a Manitoba aviation story that was forgotten. The Saunders Aircraft story had joy, struggles, setback, achievements, political intrigue, sadness, and sorrow. The Saunders story had to be shared. We must make note that Saunders Aircraft Corporation of Gimli should not be confused with the large and famous British aircraft manufacturer named Saunders Roe. There is no relationship between the two companies. Saunders Roe in England began in 1929 and continued manufacturing until Saunders Roe was taken over by Westland Aircraft in the 1960s. Saunders Aircraft of Gimli in Montreal was started by Dave Saunders in Montreal in 1968. Did Dave Saunders call his company Saunders Aircraft because the name Saunders was already well known in aviation circles because of Saunders Roe? Would a famous Saunders aviation name give instant credence to his new company, Saunders Aircraft Corporation? Maybe, maybe not, but we can only speculate. Going forward in our Saunders story, the term Saunders only refers to Dave Saunders or the Saunders Aircraft Corporation and not Saunders Roe of Great Britain. Now let's get into how Saunders Aircraft began. 1967 found Dave Saunders working in Montreal as an aviation consultant. A client of Dave Saunders, a Quebec commuter airline, was looking for a commuter aircraft to add to their fleet and were seriously thinking of buying the Beechcraft 99 commuter aircraft. Beechcraft was a well-known established aircraft manufacturer. Dave was not impressed by the Beech 99 performance and thought the Beech 99 wing design was weak and the 99 could only carry 15 passengers. Dave Saunders had another aircraft in mind that he believed would do a better job for his client, an aircraft Dave had worked on, a de Havilland DH-114 Heron. Dave Saunders figured by lengthening the Heron fuselage and replacing the Heron's old and heavy de Havilland Gypsy Queen inline piston engines with two lighter and more powerful turboprop engines would greatly improve the Heron. The engine change alone would save over 1,000 pounds of weight. The weight savings would result in increased passenger capacity. Saunders' client thought the Heron conversion was very promising. Dave Saunders decided he needed to set up an aircraft company to carry out the Heron conversion and would need money, or better known as capital investment. 1967 was a good year to look for investors as 1967 was Canada's centennial year, a year of celebration for Montreal and Canada. Montreal had a big role in Canada's centennial celebration by hosting the World's Fair, Expo 67. Canada's economy was booming, the stock market was high, and venture capital for new business was easily obtainable. It is rumored that a flamboyant federal government cabinet minister from Montreal named Pierre Trudeau was next in line to be the prime minister. Dave Saunders had a flair for promotion, so only with a few conceptual drawings of the proposed Heron aircraft conversion under his arm, Dave Saunders hit the Montreal streets looking for investors and was very successful. Dave Saunders recalled enthusiastically that he was able to raise $500,000 in capital in just one day, another $500,000 in the following weeks. Dave Saunders had a gift for schmoozing. All that was left for Saunders to do was name his new aircraft. Dave Saunders would name the de Havilland Heron aircraft conversion project the Saunders Aircraft ST-27. The ST stood for Saunders Transport, and that 27 stood for up to 27 passengers. The mood was very optimistic at Saunders Aircraft. The investors would make a decent return on their investment, and Saunders Aircraft would create well-paying jobs to the established Montreal aviation industry. Those jobs meant employees would pay taxes. All levels of government would take credit for supporting the Quebec aviation industry. Job creation and taxes were two items that made politicians grin like Cheshire cats. Optimism would remain within Saunders Aircraft right until the doors closed for good in Gimli on January 24, 1979. Optimism was not with the Manitoba taxpayers, for their government had invested $39 million in Saunders Aircraft with little to show. There would be no Gimli fame for Saunders Aircraft. How did Saunders fail? Why did Saunders Aircraft move from Montreal to Gimli? What happened to the company? So many questions. In the next upcoming video chapters, we'll tell the Saunders Aircraft story. Before we get to Chapter 1, I would like to acknowledge these significant Saunders contributions. The late Wilf Ansell with his scaled ST-28 radio-controlled model airplane project was the initial spark for my Saunders research. Google searches and a Saunders Aircraft Facebook group led to Saunders contact like Julie Fields. Julie is the daughter of the late Andre Boulanger, who was the chief draftsman at Saunders Aircraft in Montreal and transferred to Gimli when Saunders Aircraft relocated. Julie provided many photographs and drawings of the Saunders aircraft that Andre had saved since 1975. Brian Carey was a UK aviation engineer working for Aviation Traders Limited, was instrumental working on the ST-27 project. Gail Goodwin was the lead administrative secretary working at Saunders Aircraft in Montreal. Ron Kersey, son of the late Saunders Aircraft president Reg Kersey, provided tons of photos and a vast collection of newspaper clippings. Ron also worked at Saunders Aircraft as manager of the Saunders Aircraft Sheet Metal School. Long-distance phone conversations with Dave Saunders helped in the understanding at the start of Saunders Aircraft. Coffee with Lane Helms, chief engineer at Saunders Aircraft from 1974 to 1975, was a big help on the Saunders engineering side. William Grassick was the lead instructor at Saunders Aircraft Sheet Metal School. William yielded many insights on Saunders Aircraft. Martin Weinert, an aviation historian in Germany, had a trove of Saunders Aircraft information to share. Dennis Hepner, a newly minted University of Manitoba graduate mechanical engineer, worked at Saunders Aircraft from 1974 to 1975. Dennis provided answers to my questions on the Saunders S-28 certification program. Gary McGregor, the current fire chief in Gimli and former Saunders employee, provided a box of photos and have had many Saunders stories to tell. Connections to former Saunders employees via phone, Facebook, and email were made. Also with people that flew and worked on the Saunders ST-27, they contributed much information. Many new Saunders employees had never worked in aircraft manufacturing. They were trained well, worked hard, and gave it their best effort. The aviation gods were not on the side of Saunders Aircraft. After Saunders Aircraft closed up, many Saunders workers left the aircraft industry. The remainder left Gimli to find work in other aviation firms. All spoke of Saunders Aircraft with kindness. Thank you for sharing your Saunders story. It has been my pleasure to work on a Saunders Aircraft story. Saunders sheet metal apprentice Stan Wolchuk stated, "We had two choices growing up in the Interlake, farming or fishing. Saunders Aircraft gave us a new opportunity."